Think about how many weed strains today are named after fruit and candy and dessert. I mean, we got strains like blueberry, gelato, skittles, wedding cake, cherry pie. Half the menu sounds like a bakery. That's just normal now. But there was once a time when weed didn't taste like any of that. And it just tasted like weed, skunky, earthy, and piney, and that was it. But all that changed when one guy in Oregon named DJ Short spent years chasing a plant that actually tasted like fresh fruit. And that plant he was chasing ended up kicking off the entire flavor era we're living in today. This is the story of blueberry. So to understand why this was such a big deal, you first have to understand what weed tasted like before it came around. Back in the 70s and 80s, weed came in a few basic flavors. It was skunky, or it was earthy, or it was piney, or it smelled like hash. That was all that was on menus. Nobody was walking around talking about notes of berry or citrus, because that stuff didn't exist yet. The idea of weed tasting like actual fruit was pretty much unheard of. And the person who broke that whole thing open was one guy, who was working mostly in secret. That goes by the name DJ Short, which isn't his real name. It's just the name he became known by. And he's always kept himself pretty hidden, almost completely mysterious. And for years you could barely find a photo of him anywhere. But to people who really know cannabis, he's one of the greatest breeders who ever lived. And there's a bit of irony in the name here, because DJ Short is actually a tall guy, around 6'3". So what made him different from everybody else, you may be wondering? And the honest answer is, it came down to what he cared about. See, most breeders back then were chasing two things: more potency and bigger yields. They wanted the strongest weed and the most of it. DJ Short didn't care about that. He cared about flavor and smell and the actual quality of the high. He wanted weed that tasted incredible and made you feel a certain way, even if it wasn't the strongest thing on earth. That was a pretty radical way to think back then. But surprisingly, he worked small. We're talking about breeding plants in a closet, something like 16 square feet of space. He would select his plants by smell, sniffing them out one by one to find the ones with that special aroma. This wasn't some big operation. It was just one obsessive guy in the Pacific Northwest hunting for a very specific thing, which is pretty insane if you ask me, because he is one of the most important legendary breeders of this generation. So let's get into what he actually built blueberry out of, because this is where the flavor came from. DJ Short started with some incredible old landrace strains, which are the original wild strains from specific parts of the world. And the ones he had specifically were a couple of Thai sativas. One of them was just so sweet and fruity that he nicknamed it Juicy Fruit, because it reminded him of the gum. The other one was a purple Thai plant that turned purple whenever the temperature dropped. And he took both of those exotic sativas and crossed them with an Afghani indica. Now the way he did this shows you how his mind worked, because he used the sativas as the mothers and the Afghani as the father on purpose. His whole theory was that the female sativa gives the plant its flavor and aroma, while the male indica gives it the weight and the body. He actually tried it out the other way around before and thought it came out way less interesting. So he stuck the Afghani male on his sweet Thai females, which was the opposite of what most breeders were doing at the time. And doing it his way came with a price, and that price was time. Because then came the slow part, the part that makes him who he is. And when I say slow, I mean it. Because getting that perfect blueberry flavor and that purple color to show up reliably took years. He crossed and recrossed the plants over and over, generation after generation, throwing out everything that wasn't right and only keeping the best. This process of phenotype selection, carefully evaluating each individual plant and culling the ones that didn't meet his standard, was the real engine behind everything he built. His guiding rule was simple: select the best and reject all the others. And after all that work, Somewhere around 1980 or 1981, he had it. A plant that genuinely tasted like blueberries. And while we're talking about that flavor, it's worth knowing where it actually comes from on a chemical level. Because the fruity, sweet smell in blueberry is driven by terpenes, specifically compounds like myrcene, which gives it that earthy, fruity base, and caryophyllene, which adds a little spice underneath. Myrcene in particular is one of the most common terpenes in cannabis, but blueberry had an unusually high concentration of the sweeter-smelling ones, which is exactly what DJ Short was selecting for every time he sniffed out those plants in his closet. So let us talk about what makes blueberry actually special to smoke, starting with the obvious. The flavor. This thing tastes and smells like fresh blueberries, sweet and fruity, and back when it came out, that absolutely blew people's minds. Nobody had smelled anything like it. It was one of the very first strains to have a real, distinct fruit flavor that stayed consistent. And on top of that, there was the look. See, blueberry famously turns blue and purple. And I want to clear up a myth about that while we are on the topic, because a lot of people get it wrong. Those blue and purple colors come from compounds called anthocyanins. They are the exact same pigments that make actual blueberries blue and red cabbage purple. And they show up when the plant gets exposed to cold temperatures, which break down the green and let the color come through. And this is the part that people get wrong. They think color means potency. And that is simply not true, because that purple color has nothing to do with how strong the weed is. Potency and color are made by two completely separate systems in the plant. So a purple bud is not automatically a stronger bud. It just looks cool. As for the high and the strength, blueberry leans indica, so it's relaxing, it's euphoric, and it lasts a long time. It's more of a mellow body high, but it keeps enough of that sativa side to not just absolutely glue you to the couch. And as for the strength, it's solid, usually testing somewhere around 17 to 20% THC. Strong, but not off the charts, which fit DJ Short's whole philosophy anyway. He always said the flavor and the feeling mattered more than a big number. And it turned out the weed world agreed with him. Because blueberry didn't just taste great, it started winning awards. Its biggest moment came in the year 2000 at the High Times Cannabis Cup, which is the most famous competition in weed, where it won first place for Best Indica. And that win right there is what cemented blueberry as a legend and put DJ Short's name in the history books. And on top of that, it also landed on High Times' list of the greatest strains of all time. Which now leads us to the reason this video exists. And it's not just that blueberry was a great strain, it's what came after it. Because blueberry became the parent of an entire family of strains, and that family is massive. The most famous child of blueberry is a strain called Blue Dream. Somebody crossed blueberry with a haze somewhere in Santa Cruz, California, and the result was Blue Dream, which went on to become one of the single best-selling strains in all of America. And years later, Blue Dream is still the #1 selling flower strain in California. Let that sink in. A plant DJ Short, bred in a closet in Oregon, is the great-grandparent of the best-selling weed in the biggest legal market on Earth. And Blue Dream is just the most famous one. Because blueberries' genetics are everywhere. You've got Blueberry Kush, which is blueberry crossed with OG Kush. You've got Blue Cheese, which mixes that berry flavor with a funky cheese strain. There's Blue Cookies, Blueberry Headband, and a whole lineup of others. And there's also Flow, another one of DJ Short's own creations that came out of the same Thai and Afghani genetics as blueberry. Flow has a different character, though it is more uplifting and sativa-leaning, but it is a sibling strain in the same family tree, and it has its own devoted following. And beyond all the ones with blue in the name, blueberry helped kick off the entire idea of sweet, fruity, dessert-flavored weed that dominates the shelves today. Every candy and fruit strain you see now owes a little something to what he started. Now the story of how blueberry got out into the world is worth knowing, because DJ Short didn't get rich off it. In the 1990s, his genetics got commercialized, most famously through a Dutch seed company called Dutch Passion over in the Netherlands. They released blueberry to the public, and that's how it spread across the whole planet and became a household name in weed. It was actually the Dutch Passion version that won that Cannabis Cup. But there was a catch for DJ Short himself, because you can't really patent a cannabis plant. Once his genetics were out there, he lost control of them. And other companies started selling their own versions, and he didn't see most of the money. He said it himself plainly, that he never got rich, and that a lot of other people got rich off his strains. So the guy who arguably invented flavored weed watched everybody else cash in on it. And does the real original blueberry still exist? That's actually a tricky one, because there are a bunch of different versions floating around now. The Dutch Passion one, DJ Short's own line, and countless others. And because the plant's been copied and grown and regrown so many times over the decades, the genetics have drifted. So there isn't really one single true blueberry anymore. There are lots of them, all claiming the name. So at the end of the day, blueberry is proof that one person with a very specific obsession can change an entire culture. DJ Short wasn't chasing the strongest weed or the biggest harvest. He just wanted something that tasted like fruit, and he was patient enough to spend years in a closet chasing it. And in doing that, he cracked open a door that everybody else walked through. The whole world of sweet, fruity, dessert weed, and that entire blue family tree topped by Blue Dream, all traces back to one stubborn breeder and one blueberry-flavored plant.